Just getting information about what happened. Missiles were seen over Qatar as Iran targets U.S. forces. However, there is no word yet the extent of the damage.
Iran gave advance notice to the Qataris to minimize casualties and that Iran needed to symbolically strike back at the U.S. attack on it.
The world woke up to chaos today after reports confirmed that Iran launched a sudden missile strike targeting a U.S. base in Qatar.
Only a few weeks ago, the Pentagon says the base was attacked by short and medium-range ballistic missiles launched from Iran.
Explosions ripped through the facility in the early hours of the morning, sending shockwaves not only across the Middle East but throughout global capitals watching anxiously. The strike marks one of the boldest direct attacks on American forces in recent years, and Washington's response was immediate and ferocious. What began as a sudden act of aggression has now spiraled into a dangerous escalation that could reshape the region. Eyewitnesses on the ground in Qatar describe scenes of panic as sirens blared and U.S. troops scrambled for cover. At least several missiles made impact, damaging infrastructure and sparking fires across parts of the base. While U.S. officials have not released exact casualty numbers, insiders say the attack was far from symbolic. It was intended to cause real damage. Within hours, intelligence sources confirmed the strike originated from Iranian territory, making this an undeniable act of direct confrontation rather than a proxy clash.
Qatar's foreign ministry condemned the Iranian action and said it reserved the right to respond directly in a manner equivalent with the nature and scale of the aggression.
The White House reacted swiftly. President Biden convened an emergency meeting with top military officials and intelligence advisors. Within moments of the strike, orders were given. A fierce counteroffensive was to be launched. U.S. forces unleashed waves of retaliatory airstrikes against Iranian military installations and missile sites, pounding targets across the region in what officials described as a measured but overwhelming response. Fighter jets streaked across the night sky, and the thunder of explosions echoed in Tehran's strategic corridors. The Pentagon made clear that this was not just retaliation, it was a warning. For years, U.S.-Iran tensions have simmered, often expressed through proxy battles in Iraq, Syria, and the Persian Gulf. But this moment feels different. Iran's decision to openly target a U.S. base in Qatar crosses a line rarely breached. Analysts warn that it signals Tehran's willingness to gamble bigger than before.
Iran has launched missiles at a key U.S. airbase in Qatar. Retaliation, it says, for the recent American bombing of its nuclear site.
Possibly emboldened by regional shifts and its growing military confidence. Washington, in turn, seems determined to ensure that gamble backfires spectacularly. The timing is critical.
Just getting information about what happened. Missiles were seen over Qatar as Iran targets U.S. forces. However, there is no word yet the extent of the damage.
U.S. bases in Qatar are central to operations across the Middle East, serving as hubs for air power, logistics, and intelligence. By striking there, Iran hit not just a base, but the nerve center of America's military presence in the region. The message was unmistakable. Iran is prepared to strike at America's core assets, not just its allies or partners. Trump, now on the sidelines but never silent, reportedly reacted with fury as the news broke. "This is what happens when America looks weak," he thundered in a social media post, blasting the Biden administration for what he called inviting attacks through poor leadership. His words reflect a growing chorus of critics who believe U.S. deterrence in the region has eroded. But whether one blames Washington's posture or Iran's boldness, the result is undeniable. Direct confrontation has arrived. Inside Iran, officials hailed the strike as retaliation for years of sanctions, covert operations, and what they describe as U.S. provocations. State media aired triumphant footage of missile launches, framing the attack as a show of strength.
Said that any retaliation by Iran would be, quote, met by force far greater. So now the question is, how will he respond?
Crowds gathered in Tehran chanting slogans against the United States, while military leaders vowed that Iran will not be intimidated by foreign powers. But even as Tehran celebrated, the weight of America's retaliation was already being felt. Reports suggest that several Iranian missile sites were obliterated within hours, and supply depots critical to its Revolutionary Guard Corps sustained heavy damage. In the Gulf, U.S. allies reacted with alarm, Qatar itself moved quickly to reassure its citizens that the situation was under control, while Saudi Arabia and the UAE called for restraint but quietly raised their own alert levels. Israel, long wary of Iran's expanding reach, praised the U.S. response and hinted that it would stand ready to assist if the conflict spirals further. The region, already on edge from years of proxy wars, now stands at the brink of something far more direct and explosive.
Since these attacks were launched, it does seem that they were somewhat telegraphed. There was some sort of warning.
Global markets also shuddered. Oil prices surged overnight as fears of disruption to Gulf shipping lanes mounted. Energy analysts warned that if the conflict escalates into strikes on tankers or port facilities, the world could see a dramatic spike in fuel costs. Meanwhile, European leaders scrambled to call for de-escalation, urging both Washington and Tehran to step back from the brink.
Iran gave advance notice to the Qataris to minimize casualties and that Iran needed to symbolically strike back at the U.S. attack on it.
But the reality is clear. Once missiles start flying directly between two of the most powerful adversaries in the region, calming things down is easier said than done. The Pentagon insists its retaliation was fierce but contained, designed to punish without sparking an all-out war. Yet history shows how quickly these cycles can spin out of control. A single miscalculation, a stray missile, a misread radar, or a civilian target struck by mistake could ignite a broader conflict engulfing the entire region. Already, U.S. naval forces in the Gulf have been placed on high alert, and reinforcements are reportedly being prepared. For Americans at home, the attack feels both shocking and familiar.
Well, Qatar called it a flagrant violation and said it reserves the right to respond directly. There are reports Iran...
Shocking because Iran openly targeting a U.S. base is a dangerous escalation. Familiar because it revives memories of past confrontations, from the hostage crisis of 1979 to the missile exchanges of recent years. Many wonder if this moment is the spark that could ignite a conflict far larger than anyone wants. In the meantime, U.S. troops in Qatar are regrouping, repairing, and bracing for what may come next. Washington has made its message clear. Attacks on American forces will be met with overwhelming retaliation. Tehran, however, seems equally determined to show it won't be cowed. Between these two realities lies a razor's edge on which the fate of the region now balances. One thing is certain, the missile strike and the U.S. response have changed the calculus overnight. This isn't just another skirmish in the shadows, it's open confrontation. And as the dust settles from the first wave of missiles and airstrikes, the world holds its breath to see if either side will blink or if this is just the beginning of something far more dangerous.